Hey everyone, and welcome to the Decks of the Week, the weekly series where I showcase the top 10 best decks in Marvel Snap. If you'd like to support my content, hitting the like button is the best thing you can do. It helps tremendously. It's all the YouTube cares about. But I know what you care about. You want to know the best decks in Marvel Snap. And coming in at number 10 here, we do have Galactus Junk. Galactus has made a major comeback. It is sneaky one of the best decks in the meta right now, running a 56% win rate and a quite strong Q rate of 0.39. This deck will catch people by surprise. It is currently the best performing Selene-based deck, and that's notable. You are running the Hobgoblin and the Green Goblin, which is synergistic with Selene, and the Hood, of course, which gets knocked over with Annihilus. Annihilus continues one to be the strongest packages in the game, and this particular package really leans into the full junk archetype. You are running Alliance, which is absolutely killer if you win a location with Galactus, of course, but Sentry and Annihilus still is one of the best 4-5 plays in the entire game. This also includes Ravonna. You're seeing some reduction in Ravonna play, but as a whole, Ravonna is still as good as she's ever been, and ultimately, Galactus is making a comeback. Do not sleep on Galactus. If you see a Hobgoblin come over, right in your head, you got to have an alarm bell going off saying that Galactus might be shortly coming thereafter. So really like Galactus Junk right now, number 10 in the meta, and that takes us to number 9, which would you believe is another Annihilus deck. However, this is currently one of the highest performing Omega Red decks that's using Annihilus as well. Once again, you have the Hood, Annihilus, and Sentry package, but you have an ongoing package here with Zabu, Omega Red, and Miss Marvel. The use of Storm gives you the opportunity to essentially block out a location. In my testing with this deck, I really liked storming the right location so that they couldn't prevent the Sentry Void from coming on over. It was a pretty cool play because it basically ensured that you had the space to knock it over with Annihilus. You of course have the Alliance package and the reach of Doctor Doom, which is always beneficial when you're playing something like Storm. Overall, a very good deck, and Iceman being very disruptive in the current meta considering how tight a lot of the decks currently are. 57% win rate, a 0.54 cube rate, which is astronomical. Keep in mind these are 90 and above statistics, so on the way and through to infinite for this first week, because we just don't have enough of a sample size in pure infinite, so we are seeing some bot inflation in these stats. We move to number 8, and it is She-Not. It is tried, tested, and true She-Not. 57% win rate, an astonishing cube rate of 0.56. It's just good. I don't know how much time you want me to spend on this deck. Once again, you are running the Sunspot, Nebula, and Misty Knight. The current highest win rate version of this deck is running Cosmo. I tend to prefer Kyera in that position in order to protect your cards from Shang-Chi. Of course, you have the armor as well, but Kyera tends to be pretty good. In the current meta with the Galactus play as frequent as it is and stuff like that, you do have a lot of benefit for Cosmo. Cosmo is a very good tech card, and it does, of course, play very well against Destroy because you can armor and Cosmo locations to be very disruptive, but you really want those 1-drops to survive. So there is a bit of a tug and war between Kyera and Cosmo, so it's up to you as to which one you'd like to include. Leech is outperforming Supergiant in the current version of She-Not, okay? But I think that there's going to still be some tweaking where Supergiant might make a bit of a comeback or a bit of a run at She-Not eventually. But at number 8, it's She-Not, and it's exactly what you'd expect it to be. Surprising at a 58% win rate and a 0.31 cube rate, which is kind of low for this particular list in the first week of the season. We do have Loki. It's funny, we call it Loki, but it really is a Devil Dinosaur based tech deck with the likes of Quake and Mobius and Mobius. Mobius and Mobius very good right now against the Black Swan based packages, and the Sarah based packages, as Sarah Control is increasingly popular. Sarah Control tends to get a little more popular as we move into the Conquest time of the season, Infinity Conquest specifically, but overall still very playable. Mobius and Mobius very good against Death and Destroy, so it's something worth considering. Overall, a Loki deck is a Loki deck, but it also has the secondary win condition of running that Devil Dinosaur. 58% win rate, Loki is still doing pretty good, but ultimately clearly not the best deck, and I think that against human players, I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of the lower performing decks in terms of cube rate. Currently one of the highest performing decks with the bounce-based archetype, and it is Swan by Night. Yes, Black Swan, if you're looking to kind of get those wins for that season pass weekend mission, this is currently one of the higher win rate versions of Black Swan. This is a Werewolf by Night and Hitmonkey based version. What you'll note is it's not particularly greedy with the 1-drops. You have Hood, Forge, Spider-Ham, and Nico, and that's it. The decks that I was experimenting with, I was a lot greedier on the 1-drop side. This is much shallower in terms of 1-drop depth, but overall, is running a lot of good cards. Interesting to see a tech choice in Enchantress being on the high end, but regardless, it is one of the higher performing decks in the meta right now at a 58% win rate and a pretty solid cube rate of 0.41. Ultimately, a lot of experimentation still happening with Black Swan, but this is going to be one of the absolute top decks that you can find Black Swan in. That takes us to number 5, Zabu-Ray Bill, and this is the brew that I made and we covered in the Beta Ray Bill video there, and I can't speak enough about how much I love this deck. It's been the one that I'm using to climb to infinite. It's been the one that I would take to a tournament if I had to. It just has everything going for it. And of course, the Jane Foster is countered by something like a Supergiant, which obviously is kind of popular this week. But if Supergiant kind of falls off in terms of popularity as the new cards come out and stuff like that, this deck is going to rise amongst the ranks. At a 58% win rate and a 0.43 cube rate, is performing very well. Miss Marvel putting up power, a lot of flexibility with how you play the Mjolnir and the Stormbreaker into kind of make sure that you can set off that Miss Marvel ability. You can attack multiple locations with Thor, with Beta Ray Bill, and of course with Odin itself. It's just a damn good deck. It's one of those decks that doesn't feel like it has a true weakness. It's just good. The weakness being Supergiant, right? So anyways, really like Zabu-Ray Bill, one of the most successful decks I've created, and literally a meta shaper. This is one of the meta decks. It's by far one of the top decks that I've created that has really penetrated the meta. Like, it is really a big part of the meta. I'm so happy that you guys are finding success with it. It really brings a smile to my face. Number 5 on the decks of the week. And as we move on to the next deck here, it's worth noting that if you're not subscribed to the channel, over half of you aren't, I would kindly ask that you consider subscribing simply to be kept up to date with the content. And of course, YouTube loves it because it'll make sure that you're kept up to date with my future releases. So if you're not subscribed, I kindly request that you consider, because I would love to have you here in the future. Regardless, number 4 is Thanos Lockjaw, 58% win rate and an amazing and absolutely insane 0.67 cube rate. What can I say? This deck here ironically runs both Black Swan and Supergiant, and it's just doing work. I mean, listen, Thanos didn't need help in the first place. It was always a good archetype. And now what you have is the addition of Scar, which just made it incrementally better. Black Swan and Supergiant incrementally making it better. There's just a lot to love here. There's just a lot to love about Thanos, and it's performing exceptionally well, and it probably won't stop. It probably won't stop. This is a good damn deck, and Thanos continues to be one of the absolute top contenders in the meta at an astonishing win rate. As we move on to the number 3 deck in Marvel Snap right now, yes, it's my invisible deck, the Invisible Giant deck. This is my Supergiant deck that we crafted live on Twitch TV, and I included a video when I covered Supergiant. Full-on brew here. There's a lot going on, and I am astonished with the community engagement with this deck. People loved it. It's totally different, a whole new cook, and it's performing exceptionally well. A 59% win rate and an amazing 0.61 cube rate. There's a couple things happening here. One, this feasts on bots. If you're trying to rank up through infinite, because of the invisibility factors like the Invisible Woman, the Supergiant, it is a deceptive build that bots are not prepared for. So they're going to clown snap into you. So if you're looking to get to infinite as fast as possible, you will dismantle bots for 4 and 8 cubes with this deck because they're not programmed to evaluate these invisible conditions. Against players, which I have primarily played against, it was also very successful, and the stats indicate that too. Partially because it was so new. People didn't know what this deck was. They had no idea what was happening behind Invisible Woman, behind Supergiant. They weren't expecting Atuma, Lizard, Maximus, and Gladiator, right? They weren't expecting Invisible Woman with Ebony Maw, which of course you can play the Ebony Maw on top of the Invisible Woman on turn 3, and you can still play on top of him because he's not revealed yet. And at the end of the game, he's like a 1/7 with stuff on top. You always play Titania last on the stack so she doesn't kick over at the end of the game, because again, you have the last laugh with these kind of end of game reveals, which is where Spider-Woman really takes hold of the game as well, because you're likely to have more stuff present underneath the Spider-Woman at the end of the game. So amazing deck. The whole idea here is hide as much power as you can, negate these negative effects like Maximus under Invisible Woman or Maximus under Supergiant, Atuma under Supergiant, so they really don't know what's coming, right? It's all about massive power, and the deck's been remarkable. It's going to take some practice. You need to commit like 20 games to this, but once you get the hang of it, you are going to realize just how good this deck is. Just be very wary of Goliath. Regardless, one of my absolute favorite decks that I've crafted, and one that is sincerely performing, and I hope you guys enjoy it too. It's a good one, and I hope it helps you climb to infinite this season. As we go to number 2, and it's Destroy. Destroy at a 60% win rate at a 0.53 cube rate. It continues to be one of the absolute best decks in the game. Would you be surprised to know that the change to Hulkbuster did nothing? Yes, it did reduce the ceiling on Deadpool ever so slightly, but let's be honest, that was never quite the problem. But I mean, what do you do to Deadpool? It's a 1/1 that doubles in power. If you change to a 1/0, it'll never double unless you hit it with Forge or something. If you change to a 1/-1, then it'll always go negative when it doubles, right? So there's not a lot of dials on Deadpool, so they have to make some adjustments elsewhere, and they tried to attack Hulkbuster. It didn't quite work, which is ironic because Hulkbuster is still in the absolute top shell for Destroy. Nothing fancy here, just an absolutely remarkable deck that is running Shang-Chi, by the way. Shang-Chi being included in the deck, something like a Deathlock being taken out instead. So currently the highest win rate version of Destroy. As we move to the number 1, and it should be no surprise, you're seeing it all over the place. Absolute meta dominating deck, and it is Location Control is what we're calling it here. It goes by many names: Guardians Control, Lockdown Control, blah, 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 blah. It's good. Basically, when you see Medusa drop, you know Elias in this deck. When you see Storm and Jessica Jones, you know Elias is coming. You know Dr. Doom's coming. I tend to be very successful against this deck simply because I know when to retreat. I know when my outs are because this is so prevalent in the meta. It's the opposite of the Invisible Giant deck that I created where no one knows what's going on. This one, everyone knows what's going on, right? Because it's so telegraphed because we've seen it for months now, right? Very strong list, currently the number 1 in the meta. And if you're interested in seeing more Marvel Snap content, hit the video that you see here on the screen, and we'll see you in the next Marvel Snap video.